Hey folks, this week's episode is featuring comedian and my good friend Lisa Curry. We've been through it all together in LA, and her inaugural album, Alive for a While, came out anywhere you listen on September 2nd, 2020. We are long-ass talkers, and I was able to ask some pretty probing questions because I've known her for most of her 40 customer service jobs. I think we rounded out at 37 on this episode, but we actually did the math after, and it's 40. So we are splitting this interview up over a few weeks because we talked for 4 freaking hours, and this ain't Rogan. The episodes are all hilarious, and you should definitely go buy her album, or I will never hear the end of it. So please, oh my God, buy her album. So, okay, well, we hope y'all are ready for a marathon. Go get your Gatorade and turn the volume down because Lisa's really loud.
I just coughed so hard I puked a little.
Oh, good. This is already starting strongly.
You know what's great is, I love watching the fun ways that karma plays out. Like, my grandma and my mom always cough, or my grandma no longer coughs. She's dead now. They cough a lot all the time, and I hate it. And I didn't realize that this was like, it drives me insane. Like, to me, I'm like, just stop coughing. Just stop it. And my friend Rick and I were talking the other day because I was having a coughing fit from allergies. And I never realized what it was that bothered me about it. And he's like, God, I hate the sound of coughing. Like, while I'm coughing, he's like, I hate this sound. He's like, it sounds like poor people living. And I'm like,
that's too accurate.
That's why I hate it, because it's just like my family being poor and sitting around and being like, it's like unable to even sit fucking peacefully,
Everything has to be a struggle, even breathing.
Yeah, and now for the last 3 weeks, I've just been coughing nonstop. I think it's allergies or I'm dying. We'll see.
I mean, I hope it's COVID. Hey, can you do me a favor? Can you get Well, first of all, can you definitely absolutely have that be the last time you cough? That has to be it. So we're done with that. This interview is going to take 6.5 hours. Are you done coughing, for Christ fucking sake?
I hope so. I have hot lemon water and then room temperature water.
Oh man, I got to go to my notes. This is going to be great. We are never getting through this. Lisa's just wandering around her apartment. Intro time. Here we go. Oh, hi, you're listening to Service from Hell, a podcast featuring people that are currently in customer service positions or the lucky few that got out, and all of the good, bad, and infinitely irritating things that go along with that work. I'm actor and writer Kate Gaffney, and am uniquely qualified to discuss this as I currently work, or I used to work, at a very busy and very popular comedy club in Los Angeles, and at least one of you listening right now has probably grabbed me and told me you were ready to order when I was running around like a crazy person. So, let's eat! I'd like to welcome our guest, Lisa Curry. Lisa is a comic and TV writer from the mediocre state of Indiana. Lisa now calls both LA and NYC home, starting at the second city in Hollywood and then expanding to an international touring comic. Lisa is a sought-after comedian that barely has time to sleep. In the summer of 2019, she completed a 2-month tour of Europe. Have I done this before? Jesus Christ. In the summer of 2019, she completed a 2-month tour of Europe, headlining 3 festivals and selling out her debut album recording before wrapping up her tour in Jordan, where she performed for the U.S. troops. Lisa has written for NBC, True TV, and Comedy Central, where she was a staff writer on the ever-popular and super hilarious Jim Jeffries show. She also is a regular guest on You Up with Nikki Glazer on Comedy Central's Sirius XM's channel. I love Nikki. She's been amazing to Lisa. I'm just throwing that in. Her work is best described, hers being Lisa's, is best described as smart, dark, and deeply personal. I better know Lisa from Hard Rock Cafe, Insanity, and from the Second City, and sharing the stage as Idiots prior to Lisa becoming a comic that was too famous to deal with me. I was able to pin her down for this podcast, and Lisa, nobody cares about you, but I needed guests. So what's happening? How are you?
Hi. That's a hell of an intro. That's amazing. Do I get an Emmy at the end of this, or
no one likes you, no one cares?
No,
so
yeah. Oh yes.
So
okay,
no
yes,
so no
right.
You don't.
That's right.
Okay, so what got you? So you are originally from Indiana, and you moved out to LA thinking comedy is for me.
Escaped to LA thinking, get me out of here.
Was comedy your first focus though? Were you like, here I go?
No, I didn't think. Growing up, my family's, sorry if you're listening, they're very fucking mean, okay? They're very mean, but they're very funny.
Okay.
So that's a compliment sandwich.
Yeah.
It's an open face sandwich, but it's a sandwich nonetheless. So they're very funny, and they're good storytellers. And we watched a lot of comedy growing up. Like, I didn't watch the shows other people our age watched because we were a one television household. So we watched whatever my dad wanted to watch, which was mostly Westerns. But my parents would put on, like, during the day when my dad was at work, if I was home, I would watch I Love Lucy, and then just like episode after episode after episode. And then when my parents were together at night, the family was all together, we would watch The Tonight Show and All in the Family. And I watched a lot of All in the Family and Golden Girls with my grandma. And then later my family was like addicted to Seinfeld. So it was... Which is funny because I don't think any of them has ever met a Jew, so I don't know if they really grasped it. It's like they were laughing. They're laughing like kids laugh at jokes, like they don't totally get them, but they're like, yeah, neuroses, you know.
Lisa loves Jews. Here we go.
Yeah. They're like, we totally understand bagel dynamics, like
schmear, haha.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're watching all of that growing up.
Yeah, so I watched all that growing up, and I think, you know, when you come from a blue collar family, first of all, entertainment doesn't sound realistic. More specifically than that, comedy definitely doesn't sound realistic, and it's not. Please, nobody start. We're full. There's plenty.
There's no openings. Don't apply.
There's no. Actually, I just got a note this morning. They're like, we are at capacity. Stop.
So dumb. We're never getting through this. Keep going.
Yeah, like growing up, I thought Johnny Carson is a comedian and Jerry Seinfeld is a comedian, and that's it. Those are the comedians. Like, I thought of comedians like Christians think of God or Jesus. Like, you're just anointed one. You are one from birth, and that's it. There's no getting in.
What an interesting, I've never heard anyone say it like that before. That's really interesting. I guess that sort of becomes our relationship to entertainment. Lisa has a dog, just to be clear, and I didn't do this programming note up top.
It's not my ass making that noise.
Well, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. We don't know what's going to happen, but Lisa has a dog, and also I forgot to mention, she is in Los Angeles right now, and I am not there because I'm still in Ohio. And so the programming note is just that you're going to hear potentially a little bit of static and a little bit of dog rumbling because her dog is actually a horse. And so, you know, kind of can be loud.
She's gigantic.
She's massive.
She is almost as long as I am tall. And that's not a joke.
And Lisa got her.
6 months old.
And she's 6 months old. Lisa got her in quarantine. She immediately became obsessed. So anyway, those are all the programming notes that a professional would have mentioned up top, but I absolutely didn't mention up top that I'm mentioning now. So I apologize.
Can I tell you, I was super high the other night and I was talking to her and I was like, listen, I know you know how to speak English. I'm like, your secret is safe with me. Just say a couple of words. And then I was like, wait a minute. That's what the son of Sam did. Like,
oh my God. Okay.
He thought his neighbor's dog was talking.
I know.
And that's a real thing. And I do think she can speak English. So I'm not rescinding that comment, but
real quick, Lisa, this is not a historical podcast because I know you're obsessed with history. We will not be discussing JFK. There are no murders on this podcast. You can be on a different podcast for that. And also, like, it's not Doug Benson's podcast. So, like, the high shit, like, you can talk about all those things, but I just want to get us real clear. Otherwise, this is going to be a 6.5 hour episode. Right now. I know you are.
My sober thought is that my dog can speak English. Anyway.
Okay, so Seinfeld. Seinfeld.
Yeah, so Seinfeld and Johnny Carson. And actually, I mean, my family, as much as they love comedies and watching TV, they don't get it. Everything's called a program. It's not, there's no distinction between TV and movie.
Bless them.
They don't understand zero understanding of how entertainment works, which is fine. They're blue collar people. They have jobs in not entertainment. But I say that to say, like, when I was a kid, when Jay Leno took over The Tonight Show, I hated him as a kid because I thought he got Johnny Carson fired. Like, I had no real understanding. And I was like, this asshole. Like,
this job stealer.
Yeah. Johnny was a great guy. Like, I didn't understand people retire. Again, to the God thing, I thought, like, you just are a comedian. I also am a god, so that's a different
Oh, here we
thing.
go. Also not this podcast. This is 6.5 hours, folks. Saddle up. Here we go. Okay, so you have no real concept of what it would mean to be in entertainment, but was there a spark in you when you would watch these programs and think, I'm going to use program all for the remainder of the podcast, just so we're clear. Was when you'd watch them and you would think, I want to do that, or was it just, oh, okay, interesting.
When I was little, and I'm just going to set myself up for a quick roasting. I also loved Shirley Temple because my grandma loved Shirley Temple, and I had short curly blonde hair, and so my grandma would call me Shirley Temple. So I had this fixation with I was in dance classes and stuff, and I was like, I'm going to be Shirley Temple. And then when I got a little older, I was like, I want to be Lucille Ball.
Who is, for the record, one of the greatest comedians and businesswomen in entertainment of all time. She's
a bad bitch. I didn't realize also she single-handedly greenlit Star Trek.
Sure did.
No idea until the other day.
Sure did.
So it's funny because when I was a kid, that's who I wanted to be. And then as I got older and discovered stand-up, all of my stand-up influences were men. And it is interesting how it seems like there's so few women in comedy when there, in actuality, are so very many. It's just a thing where only one person is given a spotlight at a time. Oof. It's not and I think that breeds this competitiveness with a lot of us that is unnecessary and is hurtful to the whole of us. There's always the queen of comedy, but it's not two people. You will never hear somebody discuss that 5 female comedians are all doing really great. It's always oh, Amy Schumer is on top right now, or Sarah Silverman is on top right now because they have a movie out or whatever, because they just released a special. But it's there's 1,000 of us.
Wow, that's blowing my mind because I didn't even think about that. And you're right. And it not only does it set up a land of competition, but also that informed you as a kid. I mean, mostly you're about to explain who the male influences were for you, but you were only seeing men get up. So of course, also at growing up, there were amazing male comics as there are today, but that is such a fascinating way that we as women are socialized to continue to take each other down and continue to have infighting, because if there is only one, that's insane. You're so right.
And they do it to Black comics too.
Yeah, they do.
I'm not saying it's a 1-for-1, but coming up, everyone, whenever I would tell somebody I'm a comic, they're like, oh, like Amy Schumer. And I'm like, cause I have a round face and blonde hair. It's we could not be more different, but there's every blonde female comic is compared to Amy Schumer, and every brunette female comic is compared to Sarah Silverman. Yeah. And every Black male comic I know, it's
Chris
somebody's
Rock.
Oh, are they like Chris Rock or Dave Chappelle? And it's or they could be like Bernie Mac or Bill Cosby.
R.I.P. Or literally themselves.
Exactly. Or they can be their own unique voice. It's such a crazy thing. And I think it's partly an insidious thing. And I think it's partly just human nature of wanting to categorize people so you can more easily and quickly understand them.
I think that's fair. And I think, but it's such, my brain is bleeding. What an interesting thing to even think about my own time and my own relationship to entertainment, and how we sort of came up during the era where there were still movie stars. Arguably there's still movie stars today, but it's so nebulous. And now there's so many avenues to become quote unquote famous that it's hard to keep up with, we care about this person now. Oh, now this person. But that's interesting that, I don't know who you look up to now if you're coming up and trying to be in any sort of entertainment. That's not totally fair. I guess there are some, but so what was it so you have all these male influences in comedy. What would make you have the gall to assume that as a woman you could do it?
I did not. For a long time, I was like, well, I can't do that because humor is so specific, and I can't do that. I just can't. And also it's just not for women. I think that was a more, subconscious thought. And then I didn't even consider doing comedy until I started Second City, because you and I we were at Hard Rock together, and we worked with a woman
Get past it.
I'm trying to find a pseudonym for her. We worked with a woman who at the time was going to Second City, and at the time we were all friends. And she was like, "Yeah, I love it. You should join." And I was like, "That sounds like a cult. No, thank you." I remember also this is how I'm 100 years old. When I first moved to LA, I remember seeing an ad for Second City classes in the back of Backstage West. Well, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I could do it. It's so scary." Like, I thought improv was terrifying. And I eventually signed up only because it was terrifying. And I thought, if I'm going to be in this business, I can't be scared of improv. That's a ridiculous fear. So I'm going to take one class and get over my fear and move on and go back to auditioning and like regular acting classes.
Let me jump. So where in the timeline was our former coworker? Had you already seen the ad in Backstage West? And then our former coworker was like, do this thing. Okay. So it's sort of the foundation had been laid from the magazine, which also still exists. So we're both 100, but also that magazine still exists. And then, so the coworker says, do this thing. And then did you have to take IFA or did you go into the first level for people who had taken improv before?
I did my very first class there. They stopped offering. I think I was the last class to take it. And it was like, because I ruined it. It was
feels right on brand.
Some kind of intensive. It was like a week-long intensive, or maybe it was like a 2-week thing. Whatever it was with Dave Rosowski.
He was the creative director at the time, or the okay.
Exactly. And it was in the building where Second City is now, but it was when they first moved there from Melrose. So they first moved into Hollywood Boulevard and there was no heat in the building. So we're rehearsing in the winter, which I know it sounds like I'm a baby wintertime in LA, but it gets down to fucking 30, 40 degrees at night.
Sure
okay,
does.
Thank you very much. It's cold. There's no heat. So we're like bundled up improvising and it's just like bare wood boards on the floors because it was like before they had carpet, because it used to be an old dance studio.
That's right.
So it was like the springs in the floors and they had just torn the mirrors off of the walls. So there's just like glue on the walls.
So you take I think the intensive was IFA. It meant improv for actors, but it was an intensive you could do. I had to do it as a class because I didn't have time. But I think what you're describing, I mean, I could be wrong, but what you're describing, there was a 2-week just get it done option to try and introduce you to that world. So that may have been. There was,
but it wasn't a building block towards their program. So then I had to go back and do levels 1 through 5 after that.
Yeah. So the way they got me was IFA. It was improv for actors where you had to take 1, 2, 3 before you could even get into the conservatory. So we went after IFA 3, we auditioned for Conservatory 1. So you burned through it faster. I had an office job, so I couldn't because the Hard Rock Cafe wasn't doing it for me. Yeah. Okay. So I want to just go backwards just for a second. So you watch all of these influences as you're coming up. At what moment did you decide, oh, I'm leaving all of this behind and LA is for me? And why LA? Why not New York? Why not Miami? Why not anywhere else?
Well, why not Miami? Because I don't do cocaine. So that was
You're a comic that doesn't
off my list. Never done it. So sorry.
Why does cocaine come up on this podcast all the time?
Huge pussy. Because other people are living, okay? And I'm not.
Same.
That's what's going on here.
Same.
Everyone else is having a good time.
The best time on it. And we're busy being squares in the back, like, well, I just don't want to dissolve my nose and become addicted, and I'm all right.
We're like, well, if I work hard, I'll achieve things, and that's not true. So
where's the back door? I'm tired. Where's the back door entrance? Is it cocaine? Here we go.
I'm ready to just do a bunch of drugs and somehow get a special. That's happened for a lot of people.
She will not. We are not getting through. This is going to be a 6-part episode. Just saddle up, guys. I'm going to keep saying it. All right. So not Miami because you're not addicted. New York
because I had no, to me, I didn't know, this is years before I would consider stand-up. So of course I didn't know that New York was the epicenter for stand-up. To me, I thought New York is Broadway, LA is a film and television, which roughly is true.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I can't sing or dance.
Facts.
Not in a choreographed way, in a flailing, I'm dying way. Yes. But so I thought, well, I have absolutely no shot at Broadway. None whatsoever. By the time I moved out to LA, I was 19. So I thought to myself, like, I've already aged out of training which
Who knows? I mean, who
probably
knows?
is true unless you're a fucking millionaire and
Yeah,
you can
Nene
afford to
Leakes
just train all day.
Yeah, Nene Leakes from Real Housewives got on Broadway. Nothing makes me more infuriated than that. Really, anyway, whatever. I'm derailing.
Yeah, I don't even know who she is.
Right.
I don't like it. I'm mad.
Thank you. Be mad for it.
I'm mad. Also, put me on Broadway, please. Thank you.
Also, same. Well, listen, Chris Rock did it.
Also, thank you.
Here we go. Here we go. We're getting focused.
Terrible actor. God, I love him.
Stop it.
Anyway,
well, first of all, how old were you when you were like, I'm moving? Full stop.
2?
Okay, great. I figured.
Like, when I was conscious enough to understand my family dynamics.
That's so real. Okay, and then when were you? Did you decided very early on? You decided at 19, I'm moving to LA.
Yeah, what happened was, so I have an aunt that lives in Anaheim, and she had moved out here for acting, like in the 70s, and she almost immediately gave up. She had some success early on, and then she got married and her husband wasn't into it.
Men ruin everything, folks.
So they ruin everything. So she quit, and then I was on the phone with her one day. I don't know what prompted the phone call. I think maybe I was living with my grandma at the time.
Still back in Indiana.
Mm-hmm, okay. Still back in Indiana. And I was talking, apparently I had talked about moving to California for years because backstory, I came to visit California and that aunt with my mom when I was little. And so to me, this was like Mecca. This was like some paradise that I could access, compared to Indiana. It is absolutely fucking paradise out here. And when I did visit my aunt, she at the time she lived in the mountains in like this big, beautiful home with a hot tub. And I didn't know anyone that owned a hot tub. So I was just like, God damn, how rich is she? Like those like just silly ideas of things you have when you're a kid. And I'm like, she has a deck. What? A deck and a hot tub? This is crazy.
Heaven.
There's a guest room? What does that even mean? Heard of a guest room when I was a kid. So it just like burned into my brain that this was like the place to go.
To get all of those things sort of. So this was the peaceful, accessible thing. Okay. So you talked to her on the phone. Oh, go ahead.
I talked to her on the phone. Oh, 2 things. When I was a kid, I did recitals and all this kind of stuff, and I would put on plays like anybody else that ends up in this business.
We're all out of our minds.
Terrible plays where I literally would beat my friends and force them to learn lines.
Lisa still does that to her friends, just to be clear.
Oh, I wish. Are you kidding me?
Ridiculous.
What I wouldn't give to just physically abuse someone right now.
That's the soundbite for this episode.
I always wanted to perform, but then it's kind of like when you get older and you stop being playful and stop being childish. It was the same thing was happening, but with my career dreams, where I was like, well, that's ridiculous. Like, it's what I desperately wanted to do, but I thought that's silly. That's not a realistic goal. I should go into business.
The shoulds to get us out of art.
The fucking shoulds.
Yeah.
All the shoulds. So I would talk about wanting to perform, but just kind of like, I don't know, like you talk about wanting to get on the first space flight to Mars. Like, sure. I mean, it's not really going to happen, but like hypothetically, I would love to do that. And then I was on the phone with my aunt one day, and I was saying like, I want to move to LA eventually. And I graduated, went to Purdue for a year, and during that whole year kept talking about California. And I was like, one day I'm going to move. One day I'm going to move. And then I was on the phone with my aunt, and she goes, Lisa, I know after I moved, a lot of my friends said they were going to move, and they never did. And she's like, the longer you stay in Indiana, the more comfortable you're going to be there, the more friends you're going to make, the further along you're going to get in your job. And she's like, it's going to get harder and harder and harder. And she's like, if you don't come out now, you're not going to come out. And I swear to God, I hung up the phone and I went upstairs and I started packing because I was like, I'll be goddamned if I stay here.
That.
Like, I am not staying here.
Wow. God love your aunt for that conversation with you. I mean,
that's the only nice thing
I was just about to say that's the only gift she's ever given you. How lovely. Well, it got you out there. So now so you pack your things. Do you drive out to Indiana to LA by yourself?
This is how,
Kate asks leading questions.
It is. So let me tell you, when I decided that I was moving to LA, my first order of business was to buy a bright red Camaro. Because I thought, I can't go to Los Angeles with like a Midwestern car. I've got to go out there with like a cool babe car. So I get my
cool babe
1994 Camaro.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And whatever day it was, I decided to leave. It wasn't, I mean, you know this, Kate, but for anyone listening, I make a lot of quick decisions that
have massive consequences. Yep.
I will hem and haw over what kind of bread to get for an hour. But if you're like, hey, want to go to Hanoi tomorrow? I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. But how much are tickets? Like I would.
How quickly did you decide to meet me in Bali? How quickly was that decision made?
In 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So quick, just super quick side note, guys. Kate's backpacking around wherever.
Southeast Asia,
a handful of years ago. And she gives me her dates and she's like, hey, if you want to come meet me in one of these places, great. I have exactly my rent money in the bank. I take that money, buy a plane ticket. And I was like, great, I'll be there next week for 10 days. And then I was like, fuck, I don't have rent money. So then I sublet my apartment for a month. These are things that are available to you guys. Live your fucking life.
Live your life like this.
Rent.
It was so much fun. Rent is a scam.
It was so much fun. And I went to Indonesia with Kate for like 10 days. And then for the other 20 days, I crashed on my friend's couch. Who gives a fuck?
Who cares? There's no rules, guys. There's no rules. None.
Someone else fucked in my bed for a month.
Sweet.
Okay.
Yeah, it was about time somebody did in that bed. Hey.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Thank
sorry.
you.
Okay, sorry. So you buy this Camaro on $2 and you're
I buy this goddamn Camaro. And that was that purchase was also like kind of a bet. Like I told my friend, I was like, I'm going to get a red Camaro. And she's like, no, you're not. And then to spite her, that was also part of why I bought it.
That's so hardcore your brand. To spite fill in the blank, I did fill in the blank.
To spite someone, I went into debt.
But you got the car. Okay.
Yeah, so whenever I decide that I'm leaving, I don't know why I picked the date I did. Looking back, it feels like it was an arbitrary thing. I just started packing my car. And then, once I decided I was moving to LA, there was a girl that I went to high school with that I did not like. We were friends when I was like in elementary school, and then she turned out to be evil. And she called me at work one day. I'm a hostess at a restaurant, and I hadn't spoken to her in years at this point. And she's like, hey, what's going on? And I'm like, I'm working. What? What is this? And she's like, your grandma gave me this number. And I'm like, why are you calling me at work? This is not an emergency. And she's like, I'm like, the restaurant's packed and I'm on the phone with her. And I'm like, why is this person calling me? I'm so confused. And she's like, I heard you're moving to California. I heard from Melissa. I ran into her at Walgreens and she says you're moving to California. I'm moving to California too. Want to be roommates? And I was like, sure. And she's like, okay, I'll talk to you later. And I was like, okay, bye. And like, that was it. And she had a musician boyfriend that was living out here. So she had flown out here and was staying with him. And then I was going to drive by myself. I wish I would have driven by myself. Thank you so much. And her mom was freaking out. Her mom, like at this point, I'm not really talking to my parents. I'm living with my grandma. I'm not in a good place with my parents. So I barely talk to them. And this girl's mom calls me and she's like, you can't drive out by yourself, because her daughter's dumb. So she thinks I'm also dumb. So she's like, you can't do this. I'm going to have somebody drive with you. And I can't remember this guy's name, but it was like her friend's kid or something like that. And he was like a couple years older than me, had the personality of a used napkin. I mean, just like, no, not funny, not interesting, nothing to say, not attractive.
But just because he was male, she decided that was the right decision?
100%. Thank you. Do you see a theme? Because he was male. Wait for it. So I don't talk to him beforehand. This is before smartphones. This is before social media. So for all you kids listening.
This was in 1982.
I wasn't able to look him up on fucking Facebook to make sure that he was not a psycho. All right. Ugh. And the woman referring him to me is a psycho. Ugh. Her daughter is also a psycho. It's a family full of psychos. And they refer this guy to me. So I packed my car up with like clothes and posters, guys. I packed so many posters. Nothing I actually needed. I should have stolen so much food from my grandma's house. I should have taken laundry detergent. Do you know, I took nothing I fucking needed. I had like one of those giant things of CDs. Like, I still don't understand. So I pack up my car. I drive to another town to pick him up in a McDonald's parking lot.
Oh God, that's how you get murdered, girl. I'm surprised you're alive.
I'm stuck. I'm not even convinced I'm alive, Kate. I think I may have been murdered so many times that my soul just is presented as a human at this point. I don't. I've been in so many fucked up situations.
I agree.
So I pick him up at McDonald's. I don't tell my mom I'm leaving. I say goodbye to my grandma. I go to the bar to say goodbye to my dad.
The bar that your parents own.
The bar that my parents own, which at the time they didn't own, but my grandma owned. Who cares? Minor
Details.
detail. So I go to the bar. My dad comes out and he's like, well, don't look at me like I'm going to start crying. And then he like palms me $200. He's like, get out of here. And I was like, okay. Like I was a stray dog. And I just get on the road at 9:00 at night to head to Los Angeles. Oh, by the way, there's no smartphones. Again, guys, no GPS. Do you know what I have? I had gone to the week prior. I went to T-Mobile to get a new flip phone because I also had to come to LA with a flip phone.
Because you're
have
gonna
my old Nokia brick.
Sure,
that would be
can't
so
do that.
embarrassing.
So ridiculous.
So I go to get a new flip phone. The girl at the counter, I'm like, oh, I got to get a new phone because I'm moving to Los Angeles. And she's like, I'm moving to Los Angeles. And I'm like, this is crazy. Everyone's moving to Los Angeles. And I was like, how are you getting there? And she's like, I'm driving. Do you want directions? And takes a cocktail napkin and writes like, head west on 94.
This is not real. Like the story you're telling is an actual lie, but that's fine.
So I get in my car with this cocktail napkin of directions. And I'm like,
wait, with the psycho killer and with girl with no personality who's a psycho as well. So now we've got
no, just with the guy. The girl who connected us is not even with us.
Why?
It's just me and a guy I met moments earlier
Lisa,
in a McDonald's parking lot.
No, you are dead. You're a ghost, and I'm interviewing a ghost. Because wait a minute, where's Psycho Girl's like?
Psycho Girl has already flown out to California by then.
Oh, okay.
And her mom just lives in Indiana, so she's not.
So she was
going.
just allegedly doing. Well, I mean, to have someone to ride with you, I guess that's doing you a solid. Okay, so you get in.
You would think.
Well, you get in the car with Psycho Killer. At what point does he try to have sex with you?
Never.
Oh, well. Okay.
I didn't know how to brush my hair at the time, so that's on me.
This is so ridiculous.
I will also say, and I just wrote about this a couple days ago, but the rough halfway point is Denver. You're not even gonna believe me.
I already don't.
The rough halfway point between like my home. I'm from a small town outside of Chicago that I call Chicago. Okay, so just picture Chicago, but only farms and a lake.
And not Illinois.
Yeah,
great.
A different state entirely.
Completely different city. It's fine. Here we go. So Chicago.
So I'm from Chicago, born and raised. And so from Chicago to LA, the rough halfway point is Denver, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I know someone in Denver. You know who I knew in Denver? I had worked that restaurant I worked at when I was in high school.
Yeah.
There was a guy named James who worked there with me for like a year. And then James moved to Denver. We didn't really stay in contact. And then I remembered that he lived there. And so me being 19 and a fucking lunatic, I emailed James and I'm like, hey, I'm moving to LA and I'm coming through Denver. Can I stay at your apartment?
Lisa,
and he says yes.
Of course he did. He's got a 19-year-old blonde girl coming through. How many men?
A weird guy that I had just met.
Lisa, how many? Okay, so that allegedly happens and you're not murdered. So again,
not
don't know
murdered.
If it's real.
It was a wonderful time. James was so nice. He took us to the Taste of Denver. He was so lovely, but just the
utter insanity.
If a 19-year-old that I haven't talked to in 3 years emailed me today and was like, hey, can I stay at your place? I'd be like,
hardcore.
Can I give you money for a hotel instead? This is a bad setup. This is
dangerous for all involved. For you for me.
Chiggers. I don't want you sleeping on my couch.
Chiggers for non-Midwest humans that might be listening to this they bite your ankles and they hurt and they are super contagious and they're worse than fleas. So if you haven't experienced them, come on down to the Midwest and we got a treat for you.
Yeah, poor people carry them.
Oh, cool. So I have a ton of personal experience.
We stop in Denver, right? Then we're coming through and we're going to my aunt's house in Anaheim and I'm so excited. This guy drives twice on the entire road trip, drives twice.
Yeah, that's because you drive like a demon from hell and you probably couldn't handle someone else driving your car.
I do, but also I was like, I don't know this guy.
Yeah.
I don't feel comfortable sleeping. I don't think I'm going to be able to sleep while he's
Y'all were driving overnight, Lisa.
Well, we left at 9 p.m.
Oh,
the initial day.
So was your first stop Denver?
We drove 18 hours each day.
Lisa.
For 2 days. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And this guy, I can't remember his name. He only drove twice. Both times I started to doze off, right? The first time I doze off, he gets pulled over. And I was like, so I wake up and I'm like, and he's like, oh, shit. And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, we're getting pulled over. And I'm like, okay. And in my head, I'm like, this is your ticket, you fucking asshole. Like, you're the one speeding and not paying attention. And also, I have $3.
Oh, my
I can't pay it. So he gets pulled over. As the cop's coming up to the car, he's panicking. And I'm like, why? What is going on?
He has no license?
By the way, this is 20 years ago. So I'm like, well, why would anyone be scared of a police officer?
Hey, he's white.
I mean, and it was a white guy. So again, why would you be scared?
No reason.
And he's like, my license is suspended. And he's like, but I do have an old license on me from another state that I used to live in. And I was like,
27 minutes ago,
what?
Senator Kamala Harris is
I just got that same notification. Kamala Harris is Joe Biden's running mate now.
Okay, sorry. That just I don't know what happened. It started playing. So he's panicking. He's like, I have a license from another state that's not suspended. And I'm like, what the fuck? But he's like, but I haven't lived there and it's expired. So he gives that to the cop. The cop lets him off somehow.
Because he's white and a dude. You're great. All's well. Okay.
And I think also, honestly, because I'm a young girl and I'm panicking and I'm like, hey, I'll drive now. I can drive if his license is expired. It's totally fine. It's my car. Like, it's just a long road trip. You know, I'm panicking. So the second time I let him drive, I finally calmed down enough the second day to let him drive again. We're coming out of Vegas. I start to fall asleep. I'm almost asleep. And I feel the rumble strip and I look over. He's asleep at the wheel, Kate Gaffney. I was like,
my God.
I screamed. He wakes up, jerks the car back into the lane. And I'm like, pull over. And I'm like, I'm out of my fucking mind. Then as we're crossing state line into California. And he's like, this is our first conversation we're having, by the way, in 36 hours. We're crossing the state line into California. And he's like, so, do you think we can stop in Fresno? He's like, which, by the way,
nowhere near.
Fresno is.
We're 8 hours away
from LA. 4 or 5 hours from Anaheim.
Yeah, if you're in Vegas, you're 8 hours from Fresno. That's insane.
And I'm like, I have a car packed with stuff. We're not. And he's like, can we stop in Fresno? My son lives there, and I haven't seen him in several years. And I was like,
Lisa.
No, and and then after we get to California, he tells my roommate's mom that I wouldn't stop to see his son. And then it comes back to me that they're like, that was so rude. He was so nice to ride out with you. And we can't believe you wouldn't go to Fresno to see his son. I'm like,
you have that conversation before you get in the car. You don't spring that on someone.
Also, I did not want him to ride with me. I was adamant. I was like, I will be fine on my own. And my roommate's mom was like, there's no way. I will not accept this. You have to ride with somebody.
So they used you. They used you to get him to fret. That's bullshit. Oh, I would have been beyond. So what? So you say no, they're all upset or whatever. But then does he carry on from LA to Fresno?
To get back to back to Indiana, the day we got in. So
how dumb. Well, then what was he thinking, that he was going to be able to get to Fresno and back? What is he going to see his kid for an hour? Excellent parenting, sir.
Also, I'm sorry if you haven't seen your kid in years. Maybe the best thing isn't for me to show up with you.
Oh, the logical fallacies here are dripping. Okay, so you somehow survive the psycho killer who's falling asleep at the wheel. Mm-hmm. You get to LA. Do you have an apartment set up?
No, but my
because what happens with so what happens with her?
So I get to Anaheim, unload stuff at my aunt's house.
So you decide you're going to just at least post with her for a little while whilst your soon-to-be roommate
is... The plan is to stay with my aunt for a month and then get into my new place.
Oh, well, that was smart. You bought some time. Okay.
I bought some time. My room was under construction the whole time. So workers would come into my room in the morning and I had one of those just shitty twin beds on the wheel thing.
I have to...
metal thing with wheels.
Before you tell the story, I have to jump in. What a fact about Lisa is if you ever travel with her or stay with her or interact with her or whatever, and God help her future children if she has them, she will not wake up. Lisa can sleep through things that you would think I'm lying. And like, obviously this whole podcast up until now has been a lie anyway with all the stories you've heard. I mean, there could be a train literally going through her apartment, like right by her bed. And when her body was asleep, it would not wake her up. So the fact that her room was under construction in the house where she was about to move in, and what you're about to hear is what she slept through. I can vouch for the fact that it is insane what this bitch can sleep through. So the next story I can at least tell you is at least somewhat true. Go ahead, Lisa. Tell him.
So I
Tell
had
him.
one of those like little twin beds on one of those metal bed frames with the wheels, you know? And so the guys, when they would work on the room during the day, because this house was being totally refurbished or whatever, they would push my bed into the middle of the room because I wouldn't wake up. And then they would just paint around me.
And they had to have thought you were dead. I mean, I don't understand. If I were the worker, I would say, look, I understand maybe the first 10 minutes we're here, but we're here for the day. And this corpse is still under the sheets. And that's the other thing. It doesn't matter what the temperature is. Lisa sleeps under 16 blankets and turns the heat on. And you're something's wrong with you at night. Go ahead.
Can I tell you, like, it's a strange feeling to wake up from a dead ass sleep with a freshly painted room. It's fucking weird.
This is why I'm not convinced. One of these men along the way in this trip to California, I'm not convinced one of them like did some things to you that would be horrifying because you wouldn't have known. That's a good joke, Kate. That's a good joke. Really highbrow comedy for this comedy podcast to talk about sleep rape.
Figured it out.
Yeah, this is really great. Okay, so you're staying in this, but so you're buying time by staying with your aunt. So they're moving. Yeah. The house is under construction.
Well, but also at the time I was very easily, I don't want to say tricked.
But tricked. What tricked?
I didn't know shit from shit. And so I just kind of went with whatever other people told me. And I dropped stuff off at my aunt's house. I drive into Hollywood. My roommate is there. And she's like, I found this apartment. Come sign the lease. And I'm like, okay.
Oh,
I have no money, right?
Lisa.
So I go sign it. She puts down the deposit. We're splitting a studio. On Hollywood Boulevard. You know I had to live on Hollywood Boulevard so I could send out $50 worth of Christmas cards that year. You know that. And you know I had approximately $40 to my name when I did that. So that all went on a credit card that I just paid off this year.
Hey!
So I hope you enjoyed your Christmas card, you fucks.
Mazel, Lisa.
So I get to Hollywood, sign a lease. The situation that's going on is my roommate tells me, my boyfriend and his roommate need a place to stay for the month. So they're going to sublet it for the first month and then we'll move in. So I have my very first apartment. When I moved into it a month into our lease, the carpet was already destroyed. I mean, destroyed while I slept in a construction zone for a month.
Lisa, I did not know that. I would have lost my GD mind. But she put down the deposit, right?
To present day me, there's no fucking
way.
There's no way.
No way. This is a bad idea for a million reasons. So they destroy the carpet. Then where were they going after the month?
They found their own place.
What selfish pieces of shit.
Mm-hmm. The whole thing was a fucking nightmare.
Did she end up being an awful roommate?
Beyond awful. Because her mom came out like right after we moved in. Her mom came out and like bought her a futon and bought us like a toaster or something, like little stuff. Again, it was a studio, so there's no room for anything. And every day she would remind me, well, my mom bought this stuff, so it's mine and it's not actually yours.
What a bitch.
And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to use the toaster anyway, you dumb bitch. I mean, I didn't say that, but I wanted to, and I wish I would have.
Yeah. But also you're living in a studio with someone whose mother's best suggestion was to have you drive out here with a deadbeat dad who you don't know, who falls asleep at the wheel. So we're not exactly operating.
Who has one suspended license and one expired license.
Yeah. Like we're not, the logical fallacies are overwhelming here. So you know, at this point, if I were you, I would have just been like, now this is a tsunami of insanity. So I'm just going to let it wash over me because if I try to resist this, I will die. So, okay, fine.
Yeah. And it's also like to put it into more or better context. And I don't mean this to like drag my family, but I came from a fucked up household. Sure. And so for things to feel bad, felt normal.
Oh, I get that. Yeah.
And so for somebody to manipulate you or abuse you or use you in a way felt like part of the plan.
Sure.
It didn't, like, and I'm sure that will resonate with people. Like, it doesn't, you just don't resist certain things until you've grown past it.
Well, and until you've healed. I mean, I think that as soon as we normalize, I mean, you have to normalize some of those things as a kid because they're coping mechanisms to survive in a particular household. I think until we have something that it can butt up against where someone says, hold on a second, your parents putting hands on you actually isn't normal. And you're like, what? Then I think until we have something that butts up against it, it's survival to think it's normal. So
totally.
So you're living in this studio with this petty bitch whose mom is unwell. And at what point? So during this time, we're going to get into the specifics of jobs and the order of jobs and stuff later. But at what point are you then on the path to comedy? What gets us to now?
That was, I moved out here 2003. I think I started Second City in 2007.
Okay, I didn't live in LA in 2007, so it would have, because I started Second City in 2009. So I think you may have already, your class you might have been 2 in front of me then, because our coworker by the time I got here,
because when I first started Second City, I did. I started in the fall of 2007. So when I initially started, I did that intensive.
Yeah.
And then in 2008, I started to go through the conservatory. So you started the conservatory in 2009. You were only one behind me.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So where are you still living in the studio on Hollywood Boulevard that whole time, or what got you out of that? She's pausing and making a face and going, really? Do you want to know it, Kate? I do.
I can't, I'm holding it because I'm like, I know you know this story and you've forgotten it. And I love that I get to retell you. So I signed the lease on my apartment September.
Your apartment being the Hollywood Boulevard
September
studio
2nd.
Apartment that was ruined, right? That's the apartment we're talking about? Okay, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
September 2nd.
The lease September 2nd when I get to LA.
Okay.
I move in October 1st. The third week of January, the following year, so 4 months later.
Yeah.
I had been at the apartment by myself for the night, and because my roommate was staying at her boyfriend's. And again, I sleep through everything. So I wake up for work. I'm getting ready for work. And I come out of my front door. I'm on the first floor. We had windows that didn't lock. They were easily opened from the outside that we had told the landlord again and again and again about. And I, being 19 and not knowing any better, none of this was in writing. It was just a verbal, popping into the office, hey, my windows don't lock. Thanks so much. Still don't lock. Thanks so much. If you could get on that, thank you so much. Never in the whole time I lived there. So I have no record of this. So our apartment was set up like Melrose Place. If you've seen that, it's 2 stories. There's a pool in the middle. I don't remember if Melrose Place is 2 stories. Who gives a fuck? There's a pool in the middle.
Show was
All
garbage.
the units are around the pool facing one another. I come out. There's police tape everywhere. There's a detective dusting for fingerprints.
Forgot about this story.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I forgot about this.
And I'm like, I go up to the detective. So now I'm like, what the fuck is this? So I go over and I'm like, hey, what's going on here? And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. We got him.
I'm sorry, what?
We got him.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
We got him. No, I'm coming over to you with no information. So we got him isn't where you start, actually. And I'm like, got him? Got who? And they're like, well, the Van Nuys rapist. He was living here. Wow. So then now I'm like, this is crazy, but I need to get to work. I'm late for my multi-level marketing scam job.
We'll get there. I can't wait to talk about it. You have no idea. We'll get there.
I'm late for my pyramid scheme, sir.
Gotta go.
I go to the parking garage, and it was like one of those parking garages where the cars, the building's kind of on a hill a little bit. It's at Hollywood and Formosa, if anybody's interested, in the southeast corner.
I'm sure there's something for rent.
It's one of those buildings where it's kind of on an incline. So the cars are parked under what the first floor is,
mm-hmm.
A little carport situation. I go to get in my car. There's police tape across it. And I'm like, I have to go to work, yelling at these cops. I'm like, you guys have to get out of my way. Cause I'm like,
I got to sell some shit out my trunk.
Well, and at this point I'm also like, I'm so desperately poor that I'm like,
that feeling is so
the
specific.
front of my brain is not even like, there was a murder. The front of my brain is like, I have to clock in now. I can't lose $1. Like, I'm freaking out.
So know that feeling.
Oh, it's the worst.
It's the worst.
So
it's not
I go
actually
to
the
get
fun lean times that people talk about. That's the desperate. Like, I don't look back on those times fondly. I look back on those times and get sick.
No.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it was a nightmare.
Nightmare.
So I'm needing to get in my car, and they're like, oh, you can't touch anything because we have to dust for fingerprints first. It's part of the evidence. And I'm like, then get your fucking fingerprints so I can go. I literally said to the cop, I go, fine, then somebody's got to give me a ride to work. I have to get to work. And they're like, okay, hold on. So they like,
good for you, Lisa. I don't know that I'd have the chutzpah to do that. Good for you.
It wasn't even, I don't even think it was chutzpah.
It was desperation.
It was just like, I was so broke. I was like, in my mind, I was like just clocking every dollar I was missing. I was like, no. So what had happened was there was a guy who was a grip on movies, and he was going through divorce with his wife. By the way, he had 2 young daughters. He was going through divorce with his wife, said to a coworker and the coworker lived in my building, said to a coworker, can I crash with you for a few nights? My wife and I are splitting up. The guy's like, fine. So the grip gets into this guy's house, starts doing like, I think it was meth. And the guy's like, you have to go. You can't stay. And the guy threatens to kill him, like pulled out a gun or a knife or something. And he's like, I'm fucking staying here. You're not kicking me out. And he's like, allegedly he told him, he's like, because there was an old lady living in the next unit. And he's like, I know how these units are set up, and I know where the gas lines are, and I'll blow up this whole building if you call the police, if you do anything. And he's like, I'll knock this wall out and I'll murder that old lady, like crazy shit, right?
Oh my God.
He had been picking up hookers in Van Nuys and then tying them up, torturing them. And by then, obviously, they're like, get me out of here. I'm not having sex with you. And then he was raping them and violently murdering them, like brutally murdering them. And the way they caught him, the Van Nuys rapist, was the second to the last girl he caught was dead and rolled up in a rug in his car that was parked at my building, by the way.
Jesus Christ.
She was dead and rolled up in a rug. And then the final victim was naked and tied up, and he left her to go get more drugs, and she managed to escape.
Ooh.
Oh, and he had also had the last one help him move the second to last one's body.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So this was all at your building. So does a cop actually drive you to your MLM scheme job?
No, they ended up like finishing dusting my car, whatever. I go to work. I'm sure you can already imagine what an implausible story that sounds like, to be like, sorry, I'm late. There was a serial killer in my apartment. It just doesn't roll off the tongue quite like traffic does.
It's very on Lisa Curry brand, though. Again, like I told you at the top, this is not a murder podcast, and yet somehow we told a murder story. Congrats, you got one in. Okay,
so I call my old roommate. I tell her what's going on. I'm at work 12 hours because that's how multi-level marketing scams work. I'm at work for 12 hours. While I'm gone, she goes to the apartment, packs it up.
Fuck off. Lisa, I don't think I know this.
She packs up her stuff and a bunch of my stuff too, because she had put down the deposit and I hadn't paid her back the deposit yet because I had no money.
Because her boyfriend destroyed the goddamn carpets. You aren't responsible for that.
She would also do stuff like eat my groceries and use all my shampoo and conditioner and be like, well, you owe me money. And I'm like, well, I owe you less money then.
Yeah.
And
are we
like,
keeping
no.
a track of this? Because if you're just stealing from me, we're just going to have that go towards the debit.
Granted, she was also like a teenager at the time, so I have no idea. You know, I'm sure she's slightly less psycho now.
No, don't defend her. This is insane. So she steals from you, packs up portions of what you own, the very meager things that you have. And then is she
and only my nice stuff.
Of course.
Only like my, yeah.
How many posters did she take? Did she take any of your posters? Zero. Shocking. So at what point? So you're at work. Does she tell you she's packing up all of your stuff and her stuff?
No, I just come home and there's only my stuff there.
And she's like,
I'm gonna stay with my boyfriend now. And I'm like, okay. So
can I have my stuff back? Did you ask?
I did, and then she just moved back to Indiana like a month later.
So wait, she's all deuces. She shirks having to pay the full terms of a lease. So she leaves you with an apartment you don't have to pay for by yourself?
Well, I think we had agreed we were both moving out, and then we went to the landlord and we're like, we want our deposit back, and the landlord was like, no.
Now, did you
got
leverage the murder building situation at all? Did you say we don't feel safe? We're two women. This is insane.
And she was like, the landlord, a woman, said they caught him. There's no reason to worry anymore.
You don't lock my windows. Of course, there's a reason. We're on Hollywood fucking Boulevard.
I never had that in writing. I never had it in writing that the locks didn't work.
What a piece of shit person she is. Wow. So did you? So did you lose?
Then they did catch him. So it's like, well, what am I leaving now for?
Lisa.
You know, I mean.
So where did you move after that?
So at work that day, I tell this girl, Danielle, that I was working with, I'm like, yeah, there was like this fucking murder. I don't want to go back to my place. And she's like, well, my roommates don't know it, but I want to move out. So do you want to just stay with me for the weekend and then take over my room? And I was like, sure. And it was in Monrovia.
Oh, for anyone not in LA, that's not that many miles, but that's 2 hours in traffic
so
minimum.
So
I mean,
far.
you're not close to anything. Oh,
nothing. And
nightmare.
I mean, it was nice. I had a huge room. I lived there for a little while before I finally moved into like my own place. But yeah, that was another thing. Like I had just started this job. I didn't know this girl at all. And she's like, stay with me and then take over my room. And I'm like, okay. Without meeting her roommates first.
Oh, that logic has gotten me into so much trouble with, it's awful.
It's also just like a survival thing.
Yes.
Where we're constantly like, oh, here's an opportunity.
Fine.
I'm not even going to look for another one because all I've ever known is that there's no opportunities.
Yeah.
So if there's only one, or if I hear of one, it must be the only one.
And I'm going to claw my way into it because, well, that's the only thing available. Oh, girl.
I'm going to take it even if it's crazy.
I identify with that.
Then I lived there for a while.
Okay, so where in this chaos are you, I mean, because to live hand to mouth like that, trying to pursue entertainment is virtually impossible because you also have to put together a reel and get headshots and take a class and glad hand and shake hands and blah, blah, blah. So you can't, there's no networking. There's none
of this stuff.
Yeah. So at what point do you have enough money to be able to afford Second City classes? Because those are no joke.
Not until I was working at Hard Rock. And can I tell a nice story really quick?
Sure.
Just because of the murder thing.
Yeah.
On there with this?
Yeah. I mean, anything to sort of absorb the street sounds. And if I hear anything, I'll just stop. I mean, people have sort of come to understand that this is what podcasting is in these times, which is a bummer.
Yeah.
I hate that this is not in person. It would be way easier if it were in person. I cannot believe I did not think to do this before I left. I had all my equipment. I was in hell though, and my brain was broken, but
are you kidding me? You were like in the midst of trauma.
God bless.
I can't believe I didn't think clearly when I was being traumatized actively.